have had to do with the prices of issues, the prices of goods, the prices of commodities and health, and what was necessary to contain this disease in our country. Mr. Speaker, I remember appearing in this House to explain these issues and to say at that time in 2020, for example, we were looking for anybody who could give us a mask. And yes, I am the first person to admit that it wasn't an opportune time, that indeed there was abuse of process in KEMSA and other procuring agencies at that time, and not just in the Ministry of Health, but widely. But I think the major concern, the major interest at the time, and I can give you one clear example. For instance, the PPEs. We were looking for protection gear for our doctors and nurses. We didn't have any. A PPE could easily sell for 15,000 shillings, 9,000 shillings, etc. And I can tell you, Honorable Koech, that if they came at 20,000 shillings, we would have bought them. Because it's a question of, are you going to wait or are you going to buy at whatever price to save lives? Money almost begins to take a secondary position when it comes to life and death, and that is what it was. But we are also the same people who worked on it. What steps did we take? I called all the manufacturers of the materials. I sat outside my office with a bottle of water, testing materials to see whether they could be able to be used for PPEs with the experts in the Ministry of Health. And consequent to that, we were able to use our own people in Shona, in Athi River, in Nakuru. We were able to use our own people to produce the same materials at a quarter of the price. And now, today, the same PPEs can be produced in our country at 2,000 shillings or less than 2,000 shillings. So it wasn't an appropriate time. A lot of mistakes were made, and I'll tell you that and confirm that indeed there were mistakes made. But I would also like to say that at the prices that I was saying, and this is what I explained to Parliament, and I challenged this House, at the time that we were buying PPEs at, say, 9,000 shillings, I said I would like somebody to show me any place where the PPE was selling at less than that price. And I remember, Mr. Chairman, going to Aga Khan Hospital, going to Nairobi Hospital. Everybody was desperate and the prices were crazy all over the town. It wasn't that the Ministry of Health was buying those items at a higher price than the rest of the world or the rest of the country. We were buying it at the market prices at that time. And this is something that I have explained, at length. Mr. Chairman, the handling of COVID-19 at that time was such a nightmare. It was such a nightmare that, and the cost to people, the cost of lives, every day we would wake up to be told that 10,000 people are being buried in New York. The Italian government has given up and surrendered, that everybody is dying. In South America, people are being dragged out of houses and being burnt outside, cremated outside their own houses. So it wasn't a time that people were making very, very rational decisions. It was a desperate period, but we did what we had to do. And Kenya, by the way, is one of the countries that got praised because of the work that they did. And Mr. Chairman, I will say this. I am prepared to do, I take responsibility, and I did, and I said everything that happened that was not correct in my ministry, and throughout that COVID period, we must take responsibility because it was there. The negatives, I take responsibility. The positives, I give credit to the team that was working at the ministry. All the members of the National Emergency Response Committee, of which I chaired, that included members of the Defense Forces, members of all ministries that were involved. We took collective decisions. In the issue of vaccines, we took collective decisions for vaccines. And the whole issue of the expenditure on vaccines, Mr. Chairman, is actually exaggerated. Because 90% of the vaccines that we actually used in Kenya were donated. There were donations from the United States government, from the World Health Organization, from European governments. Yes, they were of a great value, and they were valued at a lot of money, but they were free. We got a lot of those things for free. We didn't actually buy a lot of those ones. The ones that we bought, the ones that we ordered from Johnson & Johnson in South Africa. In fact, the quantity that we were supposed to get, we never even utilized in full, because by the time we had developed immunity and stopped the delivery of. So there were several issues that one can speak about. And as for KEMSA, it is true. When I said that there are cartels out there, it was true. And what did we do? What did I do as minister? You will remember, Mr. Chairman, that we carried out a complete re-engineering of KEMSA. Change of staff, restructuring the organization, at least in the time when I was there. So we did take action about it. And I'm the one who invited the investigating authorities to come and go through it so that we can see how we can change the entire structure to do a better job in a crisis like that. For me, Mr. Chairman, what I say is that I hope, because there will be another pandemic, it is not a question of whether it will be there. It's not a question of if it will come. Looking at the global situation today, it is very likely that we are going to get some zoonotic and other pathogens that will cause pandemics in the future. And it's a question of being prepared for it and hope to God that there will be somebody sitting in those offices where he or she will have to make some very difficult decisions, notwithstanding the fact that eventually they could be verified for those decisions. But I hope to God they will have the guts to go on anyway and save lives. Mr. Chairman, on the issue of tea, and I know that this is an issue because of the tea that is actually lying in Mombasa, at the Mombasa auction. Mr. Chairman, I know that my predecessor had set a committee to deal with the issue of tea, and I want to say that I agree with those people who are saying that there is an interference of businesses that governments can go to a length to do and mess the process in the first place. So there is a degree of regulation that you want to carry out, and indeed we will carry out some regulation, but the regulation will be to improve the market. Our job, as you asked about what is the ministry going itself doing, given the fact that it is Schedule 4 divides it amongst both the county governments and the national government. I think if you look at Schedule 4, you'll see that the breadth of involvement of the national government is quite large. And if you are involved in the policy, if you are involved in research, if you are involved in financing, if you are involved in creating markets for these products, then you will have to work, as you rightly said, in the joint committee of both the county governments and the national government. Again, I would like to confirm that this is not the first time I'm going to do this. During the COVID period or during my days as Cabinet Secretary for Health, that's what we did. We had constant communication. We had several meetings with the CECs for health. And I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, we even managed to bring in to the ministry the CECs for health to be part of the teams in the Ministry of Health at headquarters, so that you can create the linkages between the county governments and the national and the national government. So part of the price stabilization is to make sure that we are opening new markets. You know that our biggest competitors in the tea sector is China and India, and they have got varieties of tea that they produce. But we must also ensure something else and this is where the regulatory framework comes in. We must make sure that even as we talk about the prices, we talk about the quality of tea that we are producing. We must ensure that we have got a minimum regulated quality of tea that can be called the Kenya tea. Because unless we do that, Our tea is famous all over the world because of quality, not because of the quantity. So we must ensure that we preserve and secure the quality of our tea as much as we can, even as we open new markets for it. Mr. Chairman, yeah, sorry.
No, touch on overemphasis on crops as opposed to livestock.
I was getting there, Mr. Chairman.
And then climate change.
Yeah.
So that we go to other questions.
I was getting there, Mr. Chairman. I think the honorable member said that livestock has got the capability and possibility of actually becoming a bigger industry, and that is true. Because if you look at countries like Ethiopia, our neighbors out here, the leather industry in Ethiopia is huge. But again, Mr. Chairman, we must look at the livestock farming in its holistic form. Because when we talk about the animals that are grazing, we have to go back to that farmer. And I said earlier, and I go back to it, we have got to make sure that that farmer is earning his bit. Part of the measures that we must take, especially in the pastoralist community, is education and extension farming, extension livestock experts. They must talk to our livestock grazers and our livestock keepers and the breeders themselves. Because part of the way that we can develop the leather industry is it comes back all the way to the skin that the animal is walking in. Because that is where the quality of the leather first starts. For example, if you have got barbed wire in the compound and a cow grazes along the barbed wire and tears just a little bit on its skin, that leather is already affected. It is as complicated as that. Mr. Speaker, you'll find that the leather that we are producing in terms of quality is second and third grade. So we have got to go back to the farmer and say, as you keep the cow, since you want to make money, make sure that the skin, the hides and skins are taken care of. We must go all the way to the guys who are not just feeding the cows. What feedstuffs are we giving these cows? And you'll find that when we are looking at a basic cow for export, 200 kilos is the average weight of our cows. Out there, they are looking for 350 kilograms cows. So in terms of meat, in terms of hides and skins, it's an area that we need to work on and improve. And we need to work with the pastoralist community. We must sit together and work on those ideas that are there. Because there is nothing very, very new. They know it. Now, when it comes to the leather industry, the formation of the leather park in Machakos is a huge development for us. It's a big thing. And so we must make use of it. This is a time when we can get the Gushis of this world, coming here so that we can make proper leather. The affluent plant, which has already been constructed, is actually the biggest single contribution in terms of the leather industry that we want to develop. And I'll be there, and I'll make sure that the plant is complete, and also the engagement with the pastoralists as well as other livestock farmers, is complete and engaged. Mr. Chairman, I also want to talk about the policy on insurance, because I think it's crucial. We must make sure that our farmers, the pastoralists, have insurance for cattle. Because if they do not have insurance, and I have been there at one time, I remember distinctly, Mr. Chairman, going to Mandela at one time, trying to get the farmers to agree to sell their cows because KMC was buying them, but they were not agreeing to sell. So there is also a cultural aspect that we have to deal with, and agree that it is there. And say to them that, look, when times come for drought, let's sell these cows, so that then we can create a revolving fund, so that at the time when the rains come, we can go back and restock the cattle. And I think it's also important to teach this issue of insurance, because largely there is no communication on it. Yet, there are very many organizations that are involved in this insurance for livestock. And I think we must push that agenda and I'll be at the forefront of ensuring that it is there. But more than the insurance is also to make sure that the insurance premiums are affordable. So there is no point of saying there is livestock insurance, but the insurance is too high. People can't afford it. So we have got to go back and ask ourselves, how do we make sure that there is so much livestock, there are so many cows that are being insured, of saying there is livestock insurance, but the insurance is too high. People can't afford it. Because insurance works on the basis of probability. The probability that something bad is going to happen diminishes as long as the base itself is becoming, has been widened. So there's a lot to do, I agree. I cannot profess to be an expert sitting here, but I think there is the will, and I intend to work on it. Mr. Chairman, you'll allow me to also talk about the environment because it has also been raised by Honorable Gikaria. The issue of the environment and farming. Mr. Chairman, as we said, there is an issue on this climate change that is right in front of us, and that is the issue to do with the European Union deforestation regulation, where the European Union is coming out with the rules that say that if we are deforestating to plant crops or to farm, we will not be able to export our commodities, animals, and products to the European Union. Now, this is something that we can't afford because that is our biggest market for virtually most of our agricultural products. So it is not just because they are asking us to do it. And Mr. Chairman, I like to say that in terms of what the Europeans have set as a standard of